Want to get right to Hurricane Michael taking aim at the Gulf Coast. Take a live look at the satellite. Florida is already feeling the effects. The outer bands are hitting Key West.
People are racing to escape Panama City, where the hurricane is expected to make landfall. Traffic has been building up since Monday, ahead of this morning's mandatory evacuation.
Here's what we know right now. States of emergency have been declared in Florida and Alabama. At least 120,000 people have been ordered to evacuate. The storm expected to make landfall as a major Category 3 hurricane. Of course, Ginger is tracking it all. She starts us off. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning, George. This beast is entering prime conditions for intensification. So as we see it, just about 400 miles south of Panama City, it is headed north right into the Panhandle. Timing-wise, it is tomorrow, so you have to be done with all of your preps today. You have to be out today. It's the end. And anywhere from Charleston to Tampa to Biloxi, you have to be on alert because well beyond the cone, the impacts will be felt. But the main impacts, the winds of up to 120 miles per hour tomorrow afternoon, come on. So Apalachicola, St. Teresa, St. Mark's, Tallahassee, all on high alert for that storm surge and the winds that'll take off even roofs at this point. The surge from Indian Pass to Cedar Key could reach 8 to 12 feet, 6 to 9 feet right there in Panama City Beach, where Rob Marciano is. You know, I'm headed down with you, Rob, but people are headed out of that beach right now.
Hey, you're right about that, Ginger. They are on the clock, and as you know, with these October storms, they can often fire up quickly, often close to shore, so there's not a whole lot of time to prep for what is at this point likely to be a Category 3 storm tomorrow afternoon. It's already a Category 2 storm. They had Tropical Storm Alberto earlier in the hurricane season. That came in with a whimper, thankfully, but they know that Michael is an entirely different animal, and they are getting out.
This morning, Hurricane Michael taking aim at the U.S. Gulf Coast. The quickly developing storm already lashing the coasts of Mexico and Cuba with whipping winds and drenching rain. NOAA hurricane hunters have been flying right through the heart of the storm, taking vital measurements to help predict what Hurricane Michael will do next. And they're saying the worst is yet to come.
We're getting winds close to 100 miles per hour. Unfortunately, all the indications are that it's going to continue to strengthen a lot overnight and throughout the day tomorrow.
Now the storm is in the Gulf, heading towards the U.S. Michael's outer bands already reaching Key West and Alabama. President Trump warning residents to be aware and listen up.
We are working with state and local officials in Florida to take all necessary precautions.
These cars leaving Panama City Beach stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic for miles, getting a head start on what is now a mandatory evacuation. And then there are these residents in Tallahassee and a line of cars around the block at gas stations waiting hours for fuel, while other Florida residents prepping sandbags to protect their property and stocking up at grocery stores for what is sure to be a damaging storm.
And not just damaging, it has the potential to be a historic storm. The last Category 3 to come through here was Hurricane Dennis back in 2005, and Opal was even worse back in 1995. Both of those storms doing billions of dollars worth of damage. The tourism industry is worth billions. You've got hotels and condos that line all of these beaches. You've got oil platforms in the Gulf. They've been shutting down and evacuating, and obviously the evacuations are mandatory this morning, over 100,000 worth in this area alone. We like to say you can hide from the wind, but you have to run from the water. In the case of Michael, not a bad idea to do both.
Well, hey, I was wondering who named this storm, but Rob, you be safe yourself down there because Michael can be a little traumatic.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Good evening from Panama City, Florida tonight, where they are preparing for a powerful and deadly hurricane already. Tonight it's now been upgraded to a Category 3, winds at 120 miles per hour. And the trained hurricane hunters flying through this just telling me from the air tonight that this hurricane is traveling across the warm waters of the Gulf. You see those waters right behind me, and that this will likely get much stronger. To give you an idea of where we're standing tonight, we're on Panama City Beach, 300 miles of coastline under hurricane warnings tonight. Just a few people left here, and that's a good thing because this could potentially be the strongest hurricane here in more than a decade. You can see the skies are already gray and the surface picking up. The hurricane has been intensifying with very little to knock out any of its power before it gets here. You can see the eye forming much more clearly now as it spins over those warm waters. Mandatory evacuations underway tonight. And this hurricane, once it hits, will then bring destructive winds across several states, Florida, Alabama, and Georgia all have states of emergency tonight. This hurricane, as I mentioned, has already killed more than a dozen people on its way here. And tonight, Florida's governor is warning everyone here this storm can kill. ABC's Victor Oquendo also in Florida with dramatic pictures from one of the cruise ships out at sea.
Tonight, the ferocity of Hurricane Michael seen firsthand on the high seas. The awesome display of raw power captured in slow motion. Those outer bands lashing the Empress of the Seas cruise ship off the coast of Cuba as Michael roared by.
We battled 13 to 15 foot swells last night. There were heavy rains at point. There was lightning out in the distance.
We're told all passengers are safe tonight. Michael now taking aim at the Gulf Coast, the surf already churning near Key West. In Cedar Key, sirens announced mandatory evacuations. In the storm zone, shelves are emptying, supplies dwindling, first responders filling the tanks of their ambulances. Florida's governor calling the storm monstrous.
The storm is dangerous, and if you don't follow warnings from officials, this storm could kill you.
In Apalachicola, we met Ben Kugel getting his boat to safety.
Why so important to get it out of here?
I don't want it to sink. I just hauled it back to Georgia and rebuilt the thing. Spent 2 years on it.
The view from space, massive. Michael is now some 400 miles across. The storm already wreaking havoc in Central America. Heavy rains and mudslides in El Salvador, and a race to save the driver of this ambulance in Nicaragua. More than a dozen killed in the region. Back here in Florida, we found Les Stevenson boarding up his Tallahassee music supply store.
And what time do you guys think you'll be closing up shop for good? As soon as we finish these boards.
He's taking this seriously. This is the first time he's had to do this in more than 30 years.
And Victor joins us live tonight from Tallahassee, Florida. And Victor, I know they're really concerned here about the storm surge, 300 miles of coastline under warnings tonight. But the winds are also a very real threat here.
That's right, David. Michael's winds now at 120 miles per hour and strengthening. We'll see that life-threatening, possible 12-foot storm surge in some places. But further inland, like here in Tallahassee, for example, it will bring dangerous and destructive winds. Trees will come down. Power will get knocked out for days, maybe even weeks, as Michael rips through Florida and several other states. David?
Victor Oquendo leading us off tonight. Victor, thank you. Chief Meteorologist Ginger Zee is also right here in the storm zone tonight. She has the newest track just in before we came on the air. And Ginger, I know you're going to take us through this hour by hour when this hits tomorrow.
Yeah, David, I'm actually seeing the tops of thunderstorms that help denote those outer bands. So Michael is here and less than 24 hours from landfall. The maps show you where it will likely make landfall. That's between here in Apalachicola and Panama City, somewhere in that region. It'll slice across Wednesday night into Thursday, Georgia. Then Thursday, South Carolina and North Carolina out by Friday. In its wake, it will have major impacts, even for places like Raleigh with flash flood watches in place, Biloxi to Tampa. But the heart of the impact will be wind and storm surge, as you mentioned. So you can see some of the gusts. We stopped the clock at 2 p.m. 80-mile-per-hour gusts here in Apalachicola, 62 for Panama City. Move it to 5 o'clock, it only intensifies. Then it's 90-mile-per-hour gusts for both cities. 41 there in Tallahassee. You saw it peak to 70. Even Savannah Thursday morning at 7 a.m., 44 miles per hour. Storm surge, a huge issue, up to 13 feet. And David, as I was driving here, I was reminded how vulnerable a lot of the homes are that are right on the water. This part of Florida, the Panhandle, has only seen a 125-mile-per-hour landfall twice in recorded history. This would make the third, David.
Yeah, it's going to be a destructive 24 hours ahead. Ginger, our thanks to you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Right now, a state of emergency is in effect tonight in Florida as evacuations are underway as Hurricane Michael turns closer to the Sunshine State. Residents today filled sandbags in preparation for the storm's arrival. Others filled up gas cans. Governor Rick Scott didn't mince words about how dangerous this storm could be.
Hurricane Michael is forecast to be the most destructive storm to hit the Florida Panhandle in decades. The storm will be life-threatening and extremely dangerous.
The lines are already forming at Florida gas stations, though AAA does not currently expect the storm to have any direct impact on gasoline supplies. Meteorologist Kate Bylos keeping an eye on Michael's track. She joins us now with when the rain from that storm could make its way to our area. Kate.
That's right, Alex. This storm is strengthening, and as we look at it now, you can see it's even blowing up more, starting to develop a very defined eye as it moves into the warm waters of the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Water is very warm. That's what storms need to strengthen. There also is very little wind shear, a very low shear environment, meaning conducive conditions, favorable conditions for storms to strengthen. And this storm has been strengthening rapidly. We'll get our next update just before 11 o'clock, so tune in to CBS 3 at 11. We'll have the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Here's the latest update. An intermediate update came out at 8 o'clock. Still a Category 1 hurricane with sustained winds to 85 miles an hour. It's moving north pretty quickly now at 12 miles per hour with the central pressure down now to 970 millibars. It's been dropping all day. When pressure drops, that means the storm is strengthening. And here's the latest path of the storm. Likely by tomorrow midday, even later tonight. It could be a Category 2 hurricane. Now it's forecast to make landfall by 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoon as a major Category 3 hurricane along the coast of Florida, where hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings are already in effect.
We travel to the Panhandle tonight, right in the path of the hurricane. Residents there who live near the coast evacuating to higher ground. ABC Action News reporter Sarah Hollenbach is there tonight telling the story of the people racing to either get out or get ready.
In the coastal area of Panacea, Doug Colley is tying down his boat and loading up his dog Huck into his SUV.
If this surge comes in anywhere near what they're asking for, it's going to be over my head.
His coastal Wakulla County community, one of many near Tallahassee, now under a mandatory evacuation.
All my valuable artwork.
And Colley is getting a move on.
Overnight, it becomes more and more dangerous, and in the morning, it's too late.
Just down the road, Ike Thomas is filling up this freezer with ice. He hopes it will preserve these groupers and shrimp if the power shuts off.
It'll just be a wait and see.
My Way Seafood sits just 8 feet above sea level.
When you start thinking about storm surges 10 to 12 foot, that's halfway up my building.
Thomas and nearby business owners don't know when they'll reopen or what they'll come back to.
We will, have some, anxiety.
People near Tallahassee are being told to get ready for high winds and storm surge within the next 24 hours. It's a warning people in the Panhandle aren't taking lightly. Over the past 2 days, sandbagging sites like this one have been slammed with people getting prepared for the storm.
I've never been flooded out, but we always want to be prepared.
In Tallahassee, I'm Sarah Hollenbach, ABC Action News.
Florida residents are evacuating as Hurricane Michael approaches the Panhandle, but in some nursing homes, people will have to stay put. Manuel Bojorquez has the details.
She's not breathing.
That was just one of the 911 calls that came from this nursing home in Hollywood, Florida last year, days after Hurricane Irma knocked out power. The facility did not have a functioning generator. 14 residents died. With Hurricane Michael approaching, Governor Rick Scott warned facilities to avoid a similar tragedy.
If you're responsible for a patient, you're responsible for the patient. Take care of them. That means you need to make sure that you have backup generation power, or you shouldn't be taking care of the patients.
Earlier this year, he signed legislation mandating nursing homes and assisted living facilities to install generators. By June 1st, they were required to have equipment that keeps indoor temperatures below 81 degrees and maintain power for 96 hours after an outage. But in counties threatened by Michael, more than half of 412 facilities did not meet the deadline to install or set up new generators. generators. Most have been granted extensions, including Brookdale Center Point.
Is this facility compliant?
We are compliant with the extension.
Brookdale's Alicia Turner says a larger generator will be installed by January. In the meantime, she says this current generator should be enough to keep their 18 residents safe.
And we have a backup generator ready to go and deploy here with the technicians available for when we need it.
And for more on this, Manuel Bojorquez joins me now from Tallahassee. Manny, what threat does Hurricane Michael specifically pose against Tallahassee compared to other cities in the region?
Well, you hear along the coast, right, about the storm surge being the biggest risk. That clearly is not going to make it this far in, although there is a chance of flooding here, especially flash flooding as you get the heavy downpours from the hurricane. Here in Tallahassee, this is known as the city of trees. People are very proud of their trees, but that clearly is going to be a risk as the hurricane moves through this area. The possibility of falling limbs on either properties, on homes, and then also the possibility of them knocking down power lines. So that's going to be a lot of what people here in the capital of the state will have to deal with. On top of those winds, you have to remember that even though the coast will get the very first impact of those very strong winds from the hurricane, they're expected to remain pretty strong and at hurricane strength even as they make their way up here.
And so, Manny, what's being done then to help the city's most vulnerable population, such as people in nursing homes and shelters who can't get around easily?
That's right. So this is an assisted living facility here behind us, and you can see that they've started to board up all of their windows. They've removed a lot of the outdoor furniture to prevent it from being blown around during the storm. And in fact, they have gotten their generator inspected, and they've checked it to make sure that if the power is to go out, as many expect to happen here, that they do have the power that they need in order to keep people safe. Throughout the city, we have seen people getting water, getting food, getting gasoline. We don't really know if many of those people are just getting it because they want to have it in their tanks or if they're getting out of town. Throughout the Panhandle, where they can open shelters, they have open shelters. You have to remember that there are communities, especially along the coast, where they have to try to get people even further away. So in some of those areas, the officials are looking at ways of getting some of the most vulnerable populations out of the areas before this hurricane comes ashore.
We're looking at incredible images of empty store shelves as people stock up. Manny, let's talk a little bit about that toxic algae that's known as red tide. We know that it's been a major concern as the hurricane gets closer. What is this red tide exactly, and how can it be worsened by this storm?
Well, red tide is something that's created by a naturally occurring algae, and it's been a problem along the Gulf Coast for quite some time now. For weeks, we've been covering it because what happens is when there's a big bloom of that algae, it becomes toxic. And so fish are dying, and even large sea mammals have been killed by this toxic red tide, as it is called. It's even shown up recently on the east coast of Florida, which is rare. There are many factors that are believed to contribute to making it worse. Some scientists believe that climate change or warmer waters are making those algae blooms even worse. There are others who look at pollution or runoff into the ocean as something that can make the problem even worse. And what you have now is what many people fear is that after the storm moves through, that you'll have all that runoff, all that stuff that is coming off of land that usually doesn't even drain into the water, that could be coming in, and that all those nutrients, once the hurricane moves on, could create an even more difficult red tide situation.
Oh, it's just so awful for the residents there. What preventative measures can be taken against the red tide, and what measures have already been put in place?
Well, the governor has tried to secure funding to go into helping to clean up some of the waters, or at least monitor where they're having those blooms happen. But the bigger question becomes, what can, as a society, people do to prevent this from happening. It goes to the pollution angle. It goes to the whole debate about the climate change and the possibility that that is leading to a warmer ocean. So a bigger problem than just people trying to be a little more dainty around their properties or pollute less. It's really going to be an effort that takes everybody involved, including the federal and state and local governments, to figure out a long-term solution to try to mitigate the effects of that red tide.
Sure, a major and comprehensive effort for sure. Now, Manny, what else have residents and authorities there done to prepare for the hurricane as a whole?
Well, we do know that in certain areas where they're expecting power lines to go down and trees to go down, that they've actually positioned power crews around those areas because they know they won't be able to get to them right away. They have to wait for those winds to decrease. So even though you may not see them here right now, you might be asking, why aren't they already in place? Well, they want to be able to have all their equipment intact and then get in place after the worst of the storm passes through these areas. So in Tallahassee, for example, that might be on Thursday when you see them trying to get into some of the affected areas.
Manuel Bojorquez in Tallahassee, thank you.
Thank you.